Welcome to Chatting the Pictures. My name is Cara Finnegan, and I'm a writer, teacher, and historian of photography.
And I'm Michael Shaw. I'm a writer, a psychologist, and also publisher of Reading the Pictures.
The sexual abuse of women gymnasts in the U.S. Olympic program made headlines again, this time for a Senate hearing on the FBI's negligent investigation. And again, the hearing brought into focus the visual representation of women who have been failed by the system and the effect of the spotlight.
This photo was taken by Anna Moneymaker for Getty Images, and we see U.S. Olympic gymnasts Aly Raisman, Simone Biles, McKayla Maroney, and world champion gymnast Maggie Nichols approached by Senator Pat Leahy after their testimony to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Biles and her fellow gymnasts gave testimony on the abuse they experienced at the hand of Larry Nassar, the former U.S. women's national gymnastics team doctor, and the FBI's negligence in handling their cases in 2015. At least 40 more girls and women said they were molested after the FBI became aware of the problem.
This is a really compelling image of survivors being forced to confront yet again the institutions that have failed them. Here, I'm struck by the spatial arrangement that's playing out in Moneymaker's picture. So we have the gymnasts who, compared to everyone else around them, are young women. And they're literally surrounded by senators who are older white men. And the men form a kind of triangle with the women in the center. And so even though they are there to offer their expert, we can say, authoritative testimony about what happened to them and their critiques of the institution, the photo still has this very male institutional power kind of tone to it, which really invites the viewer to think about how those women are feeling about having to make themselves vulnerable to an institution that has not done all that it could.
The expressions are really interesting, from suspicion to disappointment and alienation, which is really strange because Pat Leahy is a very sympathetic figure, and I know a lot of the senators on the panel were sympathetic also. So what infuses this composition and also that kind of reaction to a sympathetic figure? In these hearings, you had two people testifying for the government. You had the FBI Director Christopher Wray, who was not even running the FBI at the time. And then you had the DOJ Inspector General, and both of them were just apologetic. But no senior representative of the Department of Justice appeared, even though they were invited, and none of the FBI agents were included, the ones who were negligent and downplayed the horrific accounts of the gymnasts and have faced few consequences or legal action. So that's why Raisman and the others are so angry. What is filling up the gap between these two men, between Senator Leahy and the man with the bald head, is negligence and anger, because what this hearing did is showcase these gymnasts to once again voice how the system failed them. However, this time, it wasn't the abusing doctor on trial or the Olympic movement, but the government itself that failed to hear them, to come to their aid. And I think that's why what we have in this picture is one big gap.
You know, Biles in particular has a look on her face of deep skepticism. And it's important to think about her presence, not just in the hearings, but on the U.S. gymnastics team, because she has been very vocal about one of the reasons she's chosen to stay on the team and compete is to hold USA Gymnastics as accountable as possible.
I did want to say something else about Anna Moneymaker's photographs specifically, because if you look at most of the other wire photos, you see a lot of focus on sadness, crying, touches of support amongst the women, and that's empathetic and that's great. But, you know, these Moneymaker photographs are different. There's also another photograph of Aly Raisman when she was giving her testimony, forming air quotes with her hands. It's just such a perfect image because it's about her speaking also to the false promises and hollow gestures of then and now. So a lot of the other images that were published are endearing. These photographs are more assertive, they're strong, and they represent a certain amount of anger.
I think it's also important to point out that we've seen other images like this before, where to get justice, women have to appeal to male institutions. The Larry Nassar trial, where survivors of his decades of abuse literally confronted him directly in the courtroom and spoke to him, that event produced a number of photographs that really highlighted the power of survivor testimony and the willingness of women to essentially re-experience trauma in order to try to put him away. And I'm also thinking in the context of the Senate about Christine Blasey Ford and her testimony during the Kavanaugh Supreme Court hearings, where, yes, she had supporters and people around her, but there was also very much the sense of here's a woman coming to a very male institution to try to be heard. And we need to, I think, recognize the extent to which, even though there's more diversity in Congress, even though there are more women serving in the Senate, these moments where women come and bring their personal trauma, essentially, and lay them out for the institution to investigate, are challenging and they're really powerful.